So here we are, finally we've got to the point where I feel comfortable kind of setting us up with a battle report here on the carpet on the floor. This is a fleece type game mat from Geek Villain. Now this is the farmer's fields, and we're just going to do that. We're going to have like a few drills when it's the British, so they're just going to be using this field. On the other side you can just make out a little bit of the water of the river there. So there's a bit of river on the other side going all the way along, and a bridge where that along that road. I think this is the one side with the hill. I can't remember what's on the other side actually. I did look at it before, but I think this one makes sense for doing like a little drill if the British Army were doing that. So I think we're going to go with that. And this is going to be my first attempt at playing a black powder game against myself. COVID is weird, but we'll see what happens as things go, as we try things out, and as I learn. I'm sure I'll make some mistakes, but it looks relatively simple, so maybe I won't. But I'm not promising anything. So let's get the troops on the mat and see what things look like. So here along this side we have the 8th King's Own marching along that road in line, or maybe they were in column, but now that they've seen, quote unquote, the enemy, they've formed line. Similarly, the Hanoverians, the 7th, have marched across the bridge over that river, and they are marching along. They see their foes and they have formed line. It means that I think they'll travel a bit slower, but certainly in the very basic rules you get in Waterloo, that's not really mentioned. And those are the rules I'm going to use because they're easier to work with. So I don't think it doesn't say how you decide who goes first. He says, quickly looking. You place terrain, and then there are turns. So it doesn't say. So I'm going to roll because that's the truth. That's just how I am. So the British got a 2. How exciting! And the Hanoverians got a 3. So Hanoverians will be going first. So what you do is you give your orders for the unit you're using, and you out loud roughly declare what they're going to do. So I need to just check what my range is and how that affects. So our range is only 9 inches because I'm halving all the ranges because I've halved the 6x4 kind of sheet we've got for the game mat, and they talk about the ideal table. Leave the giant battle played on 12x8. 12x8. So not only is this half of the game mat in and of itself is a quarter of their giant thing they're talking about. Although to be fair, it might just be that that's what they're talking. Now, I don't think there's actually a negative to firing at range. I'm trying to see that. You measure the distance, pick your target. Okay, oh right, so you just always use 3 shots. Oh, that's artillery have different range. So all we need to do is get within 9, or if we're within 6, we'll get a +1 on our roll. So I think we just want to move them up as far as possible to get, so probably, I think, to get to that fork in the road is probably the ideal place. So what you do with that is we roll based on their leadership, based on their command, based on the command rating of the commander. So for this, I'm saying we have commanders in the units, so the overall officer of the unit is commanding the force. So and they say for your first games to use a command rating of 8. So we'll just roll. That's a 9. So that means actually they have failed to, greater than the command staff rating. Test is failed and they don't follow the order. So maybe they're milling around. I know it's the commander of the unit. Maybe you could say they're off board actually. That makes a bit more sense. Maybe the order message doesn't get through. So they don't move, and let's measure out. So they do not move. Sorry, just had to get the tape measure of the right length. So, because they don't move, they don't get to shoot at the British. So, that was the Hanoverian turn, everyone, because they're not in shooting and they're not in melee. The British, they're seeing the same thing. They're going to try and march along the road. They want to get to, and preferably past, that fork in the road. So they're also going to go for that, because it's now their turn. And they got a 10. Now, the only problem is if you get a double 6, there's a giant issue. Now, in theory, we could be playing based on the idea of we want to get a certain... You've got a certain number of turns to achieve certain goals. We're just playing the basic victory, which is you want to break or destroy the unit of the other side. Right. Now we're back to the Hanoverians. They're going to say the same thing. Try and get to that fork in the road. And they got a 7, so they've succeeded. Now, they've only succeeded by 1. Now, the more you succeed by, up to 3, you get to give that many, take that many moves. So we've only succeeded by 1. That's the same as meeting your command rating, so we get to move them forward 6, because we've halved the movement. So I'll just move those guys up. Right, so here's the Hanoverians. They've moved up slightly, and are still very much out of range of the British. So we go to the British turn. They are kind of a bit wary now. They want to march within, they want to try and get to within the 6-inch mark, so that they can get the bonus to fire. I'm not sure how... Right, so that's to there. Let's try and work this out. That's to there. Then you got 6, so that's 1, 2... They might just be able to make it there if they get 3. So I think they're just going to try and march along the road. They're not going to be able to get into melee for marching along the road. So they got a 4. So they've so the difference is 4. Now the most you can get is 3 orders. So these guys actually get to move 18 all the way along. So I'm going to move those guys because I think this is going to be our first bit of combat. So the British have moved up, and due to the kind of I didn't move them directly. They wiggled a little bit and had to wheel around to maintain formation. That means that actually they are just out of range. So no shooting and no close combat. The Hanoverians are now going to take their go. They also want to move up, but they're only going to, they don't want to charge. They want to try and get their shots in, I think. Actually, I think they're going to want to charge. That's because I'm not using the rules from here for the units. I'm using the rules from the 100 days, which I also have. And part of the 100 days is the British are actually much better at shooting than the Hanoverians. And they represent that by when they first shoot, they get an extra die. So the Hanoverians probably want to try and charge in. They're probably not going to make it, because if I charge directly in, that's 6 inches. So actually I need to do it from here, because these guys are going to be wheeling. So 6 inches, probably 6 inches. So they're going to need 3 moves. So I'm probably not going to make it, based on my prior roll, he says. That's 3 moves. I think they're in. I'll move them in and see what happens. So here we have our melee. The Hanoverians have charged in. They don't get to shoot. However, as they're marching in and charging in, the British get 1 shot. So they get their normal dice. They get 3 dice. But because it is their first shot, they get the 4th dice. So the Hanoverians, trying to avoid getting shot with the 4 dice, have resulted in them getting shot with the 4 dice. So maybe their commander, maybe the guy playing them doesn't know what he's talking about. That's entirely possible. So, actually... And they get 5th dice because they're at close range. Because that's pretty darn close. So, we roll, and on a 4+, that's a hit against the Hanoverians. So that's just the 1 hit, so that's fine. And both of these units have a morale of 4. So morale 4 means you get a 4+ save. Because the damage being done isn't killing these soldiers. What it's doing is it's representing that these guys, they're about to run. So you get, because these are standard units, they get 3 hits against them, 3 morale hits. And at that point, they'll start thinking about running. So we've done moving, we've done shooting, now it's combat. So in close combat, I think you do it at the same time. I'm just going to check the rules. They're engaged in combat. So we've done closing fire. So we use the hand-to-hand value. This is not helpful. So we use the hand-to-hand value. Let's see if I can read along with you. Right, dice are rolled to determine. I think they're simultaneous. So they're simultaneous, so that's what we'll do. So the Hanoverians, they get their 6 dice and they need 4 up. They don't have a special rule like first fire that the British do. The Hanoverians, I don't know why, it's just not in the 100 days. So, however, that is 1, 2, 3 hits. The British morale is also 4, so we just have to... Oh, that's 2. So I'm going to move from using the black dice as dice and use them as casualties. So there's 2 against the British. They fight back with their 6. And they get 2. And then there's a save. So the Hanoverians have 1. So I think that means that the Hanoverians have won the combat. Oh, and they would have hit on 3s. Whoops. Still learning. So we do break tests. So basically, I think we just rolled 2d6 for this, I think. Each engaged unit on the losing side must take a break test and abide by the result, which is on the next page. It's this chart. So, we just roll. I don't think we have any negatives. We don't have excess casualties, because the number of casualties we can take is 3. So we're okay. We're not disordered, and we weren't hit by artillery, because in this world, there is no artillery at the moment. So we rolled 2 dice, and we got a 9. Actually, we don't roll dice. That's the other special British rule. They ignore their first result. They get the best result. So the unit holds its ground. So we get to the British turn. I don't think we can withdraw from combat by choice. I mean, we might be able to. I don't know. I'll just check. But I don't think so. I think we just have to take it. Now, the downside with that is we roll 6 dice, the Hanoverians roll 6 dice, but the Hanoverians get a +1 on their die. So the British got 3 hits, so we'll roll the Hanoverian saves. So they're to 2 now. So they've taken, actually I'm going to put 1 casualty there, just to remind us that they've taken 1 this time. Actually, that's completely meaningless. I don't need to do that. The Hanoverians won. So they hit on 3s, which is completely irrelevant because they only got a 5 and a 6, and the rest was 2s and 1s. The British then get their save. They're now up to 3. Now that's a draw. So they just... any units that are already shaken. The British are now shaken. Now technically, this would mean that they would have to go. They're gone. But the entire army is shaken. So technically that's it. We're going to ignore that. They got 10. So they technically hold their ground. So yes, in the proper game, what you would say is this brigade, this is a brigade of 1 unit, which you don't normally have. That brigade is now completely shaken. You have an army of 1 brigade. The 1 brigade is shaken, so the army is completely shaken, you lose. There are special rules for that, like I think everyone now retreats, but we're gonna kind of ignore that. Because it looks like I think the Hanoverians are probably going to win anyway. So we'll give them that luxury. So the Hanoverians roll their 6 dice. There was no winning, not that it matters because there weren't any 3s. So they got 2 hits. So now we roll the British. The British only got 1 save, so they're now up to 4. So that means they have an excess casualty. So their break test is going to start. They're going to start losing points on that. The Hanoverians, the British get 3 hits because they don't get a bonus +1 from the 3. That's 3 dice, and that's 1 save. So now they're shaken. So technically, everyone I think has to no. Yes, because everyone took 1 hit, so it's a draw. So units that are already shaken must take a break test. So both of them are going to have to shake. We'll roll for the British. They have a -1 on their roll, so that's 10. So they're okay. The Hanoverians, they just get this flat roll of an 8, so they're okay. But the British now recover their excess casualties, so you only ever go to 3. So we get our six dice. So it's now the British turn. So we'll go with the British first, and that's 3. And the Hanoverians save all of them. The Hanoverians, they roll 6. There was no. Oh my god. It was a tie last turn, so they don't hit on 3s. Not that matters. And the British have 5 saves to. Oh dear, 5 saves to make. So that's 4. So the British have lost. I think they just take a break test, don't they? Yeah. So they have -4 on their roll. -4. So that's a 6. Goes down to a 2, 4 or less. The infantry breaks and is deemed destroyed. So the British have lost. They were beaten by the Hanoverians. So the British, apparently the better trained, looking at the rules, the better trained, they didn't get very far along. Even though the Hanoverians, they stalled over here, they managed to come up. They captured the road and certainly the fork there. Didn't take. I think the British need to work on their shooting. I don't think they took it. No, the Hanoverians didn't take any damage from that. So that's very disappointing. So yes, maybe that's why they're going to get their artillery, because they need that extra firepower. So there we go. The British have been beaten by the Hanoverians, and yes, we'll see what happens in the next one with the artillery and the Jaegers that are getting put together. Well, they're already put together, getting painted now. So there we go. There's the first battle report. Not entirely sure how good it was, but we only had 1 unit on each side, so maybe it'll be more interesting when we've got some extra bits to mess around with.